What is up, you guys? I'm Charmx. Today I'm going to be reacting to Game Theory Pokemon, why Pikachu is shockingly terrible. I see what you did there, Matt. Being clever with your little titles. Anyway, this is by the Game Theorists. Hopefully it's be quite interesting. And judging from the like ratio, a certain percentage of people do not agree with Matt's theory. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what see if Matt's correct or if Matt's wrong on this. Also, yes, before we begin, this is the third video I'm uploading on the channel today. I normally don't react to 3 videos on the main channel, but this came out and I'm excited for it. I want to react to it, so I'm making an exception today. But with that being said, the original link's in the description. Without any further ado, let's begin.
This episode might be the most controversial thing to happen in the history of Pokemon. More controversial than Sword and Shield not having the national dex. More shocking than the stories about people getting hit by cars while playing Pokemon Go. Even more unbelievable than the fact
It's still pretty hard to believe people getting hit by cars playing Pokemon Go. I guess maybe it's not that unbelievable.
Pokemon go to the polls.
became a Pokemon League champion in the anime. Seriously, the claim I'm about to make will change the course of Pokemon history. I'm about to prove to you that all electric lightning type Pokemon, including everyone's favorite sparky little hamster Pikachu, are absolutely...
We know he's a mouse, guys. Wait, so does Matt not know? Was that the editor who says we know and Matt doesn't?
useless. And come at me all you want, but might I recommend not doing it with an electric type Pokemon, because seriously, I'm gonna show you why that would be super ineffective.
Why would it be ineffective? Would the shock just not be powerful enough to hurt you? I assume that has to be the reason.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory! For once, the cold open actually cut right to the chase. I am, in fact, here to make everyone in the Pokemon community angry for probably like the 27th time since this show began. Maybe more angry than that time I discussed whether Jinx was racist for like 3 episodes. I won't even link to those because YouTube in 2012 was a problematic place, and my visual puns were even cringier than they are today. But if you're OG enough to have seen one of those and somehow stuck with me all these years, comment hot wings. I'm recording this episode while I'm hungry, so doing that will just help me remember that good old time that I was sitting here hungry in the recording closet thinking about hot wings. Regardless,
I would like some hot wings right now. I could go for some. I mean, I had freaking pizza for breakfast, so you know what? Let's get some hot wings too. We're going all crazy today.
today I'm here to dash a different set of dreams to demonstrate the absolute scientific uselessness of electric, or if you're a card game aficionado, lightning type Pokemon. These Pokemon include Pikachu, obviously, and his evolution Raichu, and then all those other electric types that only the hardcore Pokemon fans know, let alone care about, like Galvantula, Electrike, Xurkitree, which, let's face it, is literally just a pile of wires. Look at this thing, it's got a plug as a foot. They didn't even give this thing a face. So for all of you who don't care at
well, all it needs is a mask and it would fit in with the rest of society. Isn't that deep? We live in a society.
all about the bundle of cords in the corner of your computer room, you can just take everything I'm talking about and just apply it to Pikachu, the electric rodent that we all love. And even though we do indeed love him for just how gosh darn
Is it just me, or is the 8-bit version of Pikachu cuter than the more flushed out, like, HD version?
cute he is, I'm still here to tell you that he doesn't pack any more of a punch than that freshly laundered towel that gave you static shock when you grabbed it out.
Oh, you're telling me that Pikachu shock is the equivalent to this? Okay, now that's hard to believe. Okay, that's hard to believe, Matt. I was thinking, well, maybe it's kind of like the shock if you touch a light switch, like freaking 6-7 months ago. This whole desk here was brought back, and we were working on some wiring crap here because the wiring in our house is so bad. There's like a light switch right behind here, and it was pulled out of the wall, and the cover on the light switch was off. So all you had was like an actual like switch, and there's wires coming and touching it. And those are live wires, which normally you don't see that because they're covered by like a cap. And one time I came downstairs, I flipped on the light switch, I touched one of the live wires, and I've never had a shock that bad. That legit, I'm lucky I survived that. But I was thinking, well, maybe a Pikachu shock was an equivalent to something like that, or maybe a little bit less. But no, you're telling me it's the equivalent of this? Hard to believe.
Out of the dryer. How could this be possible, you say? Since we see him coming through for Ash with lots of cool lightning moves all the time, like this one. And even more so when you get to his evolved form Raichu. It's his evolved form. He should be more powerful than he already was, right? Well, okay, let's start our discussion today by talking about Raichu. Raichu, Pikachu's cooler, oranger evolution that failed to capture everyone's heart like Pikachu, relies on his...
Yeah, I think it's probably the ears. I think it's probably the ears that do it. The ears look friggin' weird.
Signature lightning bolt moveset when he charges up his cheeks, then kind of blows out a big lightning bolt that, to his credit, seems to deliver a pretty decent wallop. According to Raichu's Pokedex entry in Fire Red and Pokemon Sun, as well as episode 14 of the anime, Raichu, quote, unleashes electric shocks that can reach 100,000 volts. And that seems like a huge number.
100,000 volts? That's a huge number. I can't wait to find out if Matt's right here, because so far, you know, 100,000 volts, that's a lot of volts. That's a lot of volts. Like, what does an average battery have? Like, 20 volts or something? I don't know.
Right? Like, 100,000 of anything must pack a big punch because there's just a lot of zeros in that number. And then there's volts. Volts, those are like the magical electricity pieces, right? And we don't really know anything about electricity other than it's pretty zappy, so a lot of volts must mean Raichu is basically deep frying any Pokemon who stands.
Okay, I like that. I like that graphic. That turning into fish and chips, that's well done. Well done to the editor there.
In his way, right? Well, slow down there, my little Excelgor, because it turns out science is not on Raichu's side. Like, really not on his side. And to understand just how shockingly mediocre Raichu's shocking power set actually is, I need to school you, and apparently everyone at Game Freak, about how exactly lightning works. First thing to know is that shooting lightning at someone is not like shooting anything else at them. Water Pokemon shoot water, fire Pokemon shoot fire, grass Pokemon are stirring up leaves in a menacing way, I guess. All of that makes at least some level of basic sense because those are all objects that you can actually shoot at someone. But can you actually zap someone with electricity from a distance? Not really. Not even with electric weapons that we currently have today. I mean, think about how a stun gun works.
Yeah, it shoots the two little dart thingies at you, and when they connect to you, the current goes through them, which then shocks you. Wait. I think I got something here. What if Matt's saying that although 100,000 volts is a lot, I think that is enough to, you know, whap someone. But I think what Matt's saying is that you can't direct it. By the logic of electricity and whatnot, or lightning, the way lightning works is that it searches out like the ground or whatever, or the closest thing to the ground or something like that. So, you know, if you have a massive tower and then you have like a little tiny car below the tower, lightning's gonna go to the tower because it's closer to the lightning source, I believe, right? So are you saying that although you might have 100,000 volts of electricity at your fingertips, you can't direct it?
It works by shooting wires at people, and it only works if there's a physical connection between the target and the stun gun. Similarly, a taser only works when you hold it directly against someone's skin. So in light of that, it seems only fair to question this idea that you can shoot lightning bolts at people, or in our case, other anthropomorphized keychains. How do electric Pokemon movesets work exactly? And more importantly, what does science actually tell us about how strong these electric attacks should be? At first glance, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with electric-type Pokemon. They shoot electricity out of themselves just like lightning, and lightning is a real thing in the real world.
Who would have guessed?
We know it can strike from a long distance, so a lightning bolt between Pikachu and the nearest Bulbasaur should work in largely the same way, right? Well, not when you look at what lightning really is. To put it in scientific terms, lightning is an electrostatic discharge that occurs between 2 points that have themselves an electric potential difference. Nerd! For the non-textbook definition, let's look.
Is Matt roasting himself? Nerd. What are you, a freaking nerd? Go read some more books. Nerd.
An example, shall we? You know how batteries have one end that's marked positive and the other end that's marked negative? And how if you put the batteries together, you need to put them all facing so the negative end of one battery touches the positive
Yeah, like the human centipede, right?
end of the next battery? That's because in order for electricity to flow, there needs to be what's called an electric potential difference, which in the case of batteries is a difference in the charge, negative or positive. At the negative end of the battery, there's a buildup of negative charge, which is why it's called the
I like how freaking I hate everything is included in there.
Negative end. Pretty obvious. I've always found it confusing that the negative end of the battery is where all the charge is, because negative always makes you think of not having enough of something. But remember, in electricity, it's the opposite. Since electricity is talking about the flow of electrons, and electrons have negative charge.
I didn't know that. I always thought the positive side was the positive side. I didn't know the negative side actually had the charge.
Where those electrons are built up is where the things are gonna start. Makes sense, right? Electric charge always starts from the biggest pile of electrons, the negative end, and flows to the positive, from where there's a lot of charge to where there's less charge, until all the extra negative charge has spilled over into the positive areas and everything winds up neutral. That's when your batteries run out. All the negative charge.
I didn't know that. That's actually really cool. Matt, you're better at teaching science than a lot of science teachers.
Is flowed toward the positive end of the battery, and there's no more difference between them anymore, and the battery gets thrown out, or more accurately, recycled safely. The difference.
How are you supposed to get rid of batteries? Because I've heard that you're not supposed to recycle them, or you're not supposed to put them in. So it doesn't make any sense. Then yeah, then I heard that you put them in the garbage, goes into like to the waste dump or whatever.
Difference between the negative end of one battery and the positive end of the next battery is called that electric potential difference. The shorter, easier way to say electric potential difference, by the way, is to say voltage. That is what volts are. So when you hear me talk about how many volts something has, volts aren't a thing that you can hold in your hand or toss around. It's just the difference between the electric potential of two things. The greater the voltage difference between two objects, the more easily that electricity is going to be able to flow between them. And just like water flows down a steep cliff more easily than it flows down a little slope, electricity finds it easier to flow when there's a high voltage difference. Higher volts means a steeper slope.
So if Pikachu is 100,000 volts or whatever, that means it's a really stronger flow. I'm still trying to figure out what Matt's getting at here. So far, it seems like what Matt's getting at is that although Pikachu might be really strong with like electricity or whatever, is that Pikachu can't aim where the electricity is going. So if he does disperse electricity, it's probably just gonna go right to the ground and be absorbed into the ground. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
If you're using that water analogy. You can actually see this play out in practically every lightning storm. During a storm, negative charge builds up on the bottoms of clouds, making it.
Oh, the ground is positive? Is that why it goes to the ground? Okay, so that actually makes more sense then.
Polarly opposite from the positively charged ground below it. Sometimes, like during thunderstorms, that potential difference between the negatively charged cloud and the positively charged ground becomes so big that it's able to overcome the resistance of miles of air. And that brings up the question of what I mean by resistance. Well, the air all around us has a lot of molecules, and each one of them has to become supercharged to carry the lightning bolt through the air. And it turns out that air doesn't want to randomly become lightning, which is pretty darn good for us, but it also means that the lightning bolt has to overcome a lot of resistance to get the air to charge up enough.
Yeah, what's a lightning's voltage? You know, would 100,000 volts be enough to pass through the air?
To carry that bolt all the way down to the ground. In order to overcome that resistance, you need a huge voltage difference between the clouds and the ground. How big a difference we talking about here?
Millions?
Like a billion. Unironically, not even joking, about as high as 1.3 billion volts.
Oh, dang. Wait, so if it's that powerful... Actually, that would explain a lot. Like, anything that gets hit by lightning, it normally gets destroyed, whether it be a person or a tree. You know, it'll obliterate it. What the frig's going on up there?
If we want to be exact about it. At high enough voltages, the air actually becomes ionized and becomes plasma. That's the fourth state of matter, ladies and
What? There's that fourth state of matter?
gentlemen, after gas, liquid, and solid, the air actually stops being a gas and becomes an entirely different state of matter. So, you can imagine how much energy that's gonna take. That's what...
What the frick? What's plasma? All I know what plasma is like in alien movies, and aliens leave plasma around or whatever, right? I didn't know plasma was an actual like thing in the real world.
What's going on every time you see a bolt of lightning in the sky. The reason that potential has to be millions or even a billion volts is that the resistance between the points is so big. Tall objects.
Yeah, but Pikachu isn't that far away from the ground or other people. He's not miles. It's like maybe 20 feet. feet or something.
Like trees are more likely to be struck by lightning because there's less distance between the cloud and the top of the tree than there is from the cloud to the ground. So the electric potential difference required to close that gap is smaller. And since the electrons are looking for the path of least resistance, well, they're gonna take it if they can. So could an...
That's why you never walk in a thunderstorm with an umbrella, which is ironic because you would think, oh, it's a thunderstorm, you need an umbrella. Well, I mean, that also makes it easier for you to get hit by lightning. But I think I understand what Matt's getting at here, is that although Pikachu might have 100,000 volts or whatever, I think what would happen is that if Pikachu were to dispel electricity, it would go right into the ground.
An electric Pokemon strike its foes by summoning lightning from the sky like a thundercloud would? Not even close. Remember, lightning strikes
Matt, why do you gotta ruin everything?
can have voltages as high as 1.3 billion volts. And even small lightning strikes carry voltages in the hundreds of millions range. Consulting the Pokedex, we're reminded that Raichu, the stronger, more evolved form of Pikachu, can only reach at
Oh, it was Raichu that had the 100,000? What does Pikachu have, like 50?
most 100,000 volts. That is 0.01% of the voltage required to pull off a large lightning strike that could travel from the clouds to the ground. How far will 100,000 volts carry you? Well, it takes around 30,000 volts per centimeter to...
What? Maybe Matt's right with the, touching static, like, sheets. Because you'd only get, like, maybe an inch away or so, and then you wouldn't get hit.
Jump a gap of air that hasn't been ionized. So, if we're using Raichu as baseline for what a typical electric Pokemon should be capable of, that 100,000 volts is only going to be enough to jump a gap of 3.33 centimeters, or just 1.3 inches. That's some close quarters combat for a Pokemon battle. And what's even more concerning is that even if Raichu is standing right in front of another Pokemon, the only one who's really at risk of getting electrocuted is himself. Wait, what? How do we go from Raichu?
I think you'd mean the ground. Like, if he dispels electricity and it's gonna go to the positive, if he's acting as a negative, then the positive would be the ground. So his electricity would probably just go right into the ground and nothing would happen, right? Did Matt even think of that possibility?
Shooting lightning to Raichu electrocuting himself. Well, the thing about lightning is that we don't actually decide where it goes. It just always will follow the path of least resistance.
Yeah, and if he's standing on the ground, it's gonna go right into the ground, and it's not gonna do anything else. I think Matt might have messed up in his theory here, because he didn't think of the obvious big positive. If the ground's the positive, then the electricity's gonna go right into it.
Targeting your lightning strike like you see in Pokemon battles, or heck, like you see in Star Wars, does indeed look awesome, but it actually defies everything about physics and how electricity travels. The truth is that lightning just strikes the closest thing with the least resistance. And in Raichu's case, that's likely just gonna be himself.
Why not the ground? Why not the ground?
Looking at the way Pikachu and Raichu's power sets work, the charge they build up canonically comes from these two little cutesy spots on their cheeks. They somehow turn those two...
Maybe that's why Raichu isn't as cute. If you made these Raichu's cheeks, like, red, and you just fixed his ears to make him less nasty, he's got a weird, like, thingy on it, which doesn't look good. If you fix that and made his cheeks pink or red, it would probably look a lot better.
Spots into the negative end of the battery, supercharging them with lots of negative ions before shooting that negative charge out at their opponent. But the...
Oh, wait a minute. This is the negative part, so it's only the cheeks? So is he gonna act as a positive then? So yeah, wouldn't it just electrocute himself? So maybe it wouldn't even go to the ground.
Problem with that is when your cheeks are negatively charged and the rest of you isn't, then the
oh my goodness.
positively charged thing is just still gonna be you yourself. To understand why that's the
That makes sense.
case, we need to go back to this idea of resistance. Like I said earlier, sending electricity through the air is really hard. Again, this is lucky for us because it means we're not getting zapped every time a breeze blows, but it also means that electricity would rather travel through pretty much any other object before traveling through the air itself. Metals like copper or aluminum have a very low resistance, for instance, which makes it really easy for electricity to travel through them, and which is why we use metal wiring for our electronics. If you use a professional resistance meter to measure the resistance of aluminum or copper, it'll read almost 0 ohms.
Ever since my wife left me, she left me with 0 ohms. That's right, she took my bloody house.
which is the official unit of resistance. Try something else though, like say a piece of steak, and you're gonna see it register several thousand. Oh,
Really? Ohms more like noms. Because I want to nom some steak up. That's a bad joke. Bad Charmx. Bad joke.
slightly more resistant to letting electricity pass through it easily. It's gonna default to the metal, but in a pinch, it'll go through the steak. Measure the resistance of the dry area on the outside of your skin, and it's even higher still. Now compare all of those to air, which is an insulator, meaning that it's particularly bad conducting electricity. While the resistance of air can vary a lot because the water level in the air can change, you're talking in the realm of billions to tens of billions of ohms of resistance. It's not even a contest. If electricity can go through almost anything else, it's gonna do it. So taking this to the logical conclusion, if Pikachu or Raichu builds up a big negative charge in their cheeks, creating
It's gonna go into themselves and then probably into the ground from there. Well, I think Matt's right. Matt, why do you gotta ruin everything?
a big voltage difference between themselves
I can't be mad. I knew what I was getting into. I know how Matt works. I knew this was gonna not end up going so well for Pikachu.
and the ground, well, the path of least resistance between the cheeks and the ground is gonna be just through its own body.
Yeah, see, that makes sense. That makes sense.
A pair of insulating rubber booties, so the path of least resistance for every single lightning attack is just straight through the rodent's own self. Now, sometimes Pikachu decides to leap up off the ground to perform his attack, so now he's closer to his opponent than he is to the ground, which honestly is a smart move and the only way to scientifically avoid striking himself with that lightning.
But it's not powerful enough for it to go out of this. Like, you know, it'll only go out like an inch.
Sometimes an inch is all you need.
Any part of him that's not negatively charged would still absorb all that lightning power before it ever reaches his opponent. He is literally just frying himself with every attack, but hey, at least he still looks cute, right? But you know what? Even I'm not heartless enough to want to see him fail, so what if we give him the
Well, I think needless to say, I don't think he's gonna win any fights.
ultimate benefit of the doubt and said that he could still manage to lightning strike another Pokemon, sending electricity through the air and hitting that other Pokemon on the battlefield. How strong would a strike like that be? How much damage would that lightning be doing? Well, it turns out that we can actually calculate that. The strength of an
What?
electrical strike is measured in amperes, or amps, not in volts. Remember, volts aren't a thing that you can hold in your hand. A volt is just the difference between two electric charges. The strength of the shock all depends on the amps, and there it doesn't take much to do a lot of damage. A shock as small as 10 milliamps or 0.01 amps
What's that? Extreme breathing difficulties. Breathing upset, labored, severe shock. How much is in
is going to be a shock that you're going to feel, and a shock of 200 milliamps is fatal.
How many amps are in? Okay, give me a second here. Okay, so I looked it up, and a house light switch has around 15 to 20 amps. Normally 15, 20 is less common. But that's what I got shocked by when I touched the light switch, and that was a huge shock to me.
So can Pikachu cause that level of real damage? To figure out the strength of the shock, we need to use the equation for amps. Amps are equal to volts divided by resistance. So amps is going to equal volts divided by ohms. When the volts are high and the resistance is low, like say Pikachu were sending those 100,000 volts down a wire with almost no resistance, well, we're going to get ourselves a big old wallop of electricity. Really high amps, super effective damage. But if he's sending that 100,000 volts across the air at 30,000 ohms of resistance per centimeter, well, that shock isn't going to be very strong for very long. In a typical Pokemon battle, Raichu
What was that face that you gave him?
an arena from his opponent, so let's say conservatively he's like 10 feet out. To send 100,000 volts that far, it
Yeah, 10 feet out. It seems more like 15, 20.
has to get through at least 9.1
Like 10 feet. 10 feet isn't much at all.
million ohms of resistance. To
Wait,
get through
what?
at least 9.1 million ohms of resistance, which means the shock that hits the other Pokemon is going to be at absolute most 0.01 amps.
It's nothing. That's nothing. 0.01. That's nothing. That's like, oh, what the frick was that?
It's about the shock of a nasty doorknob spark. Ooh, that's
Yeah.
some violent static electricity. But it's not going to be nearly as bad as if you accidentally stuck your finger in an electrical outlet. So, you see, volts have almost nothing to do with the strength of a shock.
Yeah, don't stick your fingers in electrical outlets. I don't know how many amps they have, you know, because I accidentally touched a light switch outlet, and that felt like a lot more than 15 amps. But I wouldn't be surprised if electrical outlets have more, just because they have to power stuff. You know, they're not turning on lights. I don't know.
When it comes to sending electricity through the air, the resistance of the air is the thing that's ultimately hindering the strength of that attack. Now, as one last and final
Yeah, if he was in water, would it be a different story? Like, if Pikachu was in water, could he electrocute people easier?
thought, if Raichu and Pikachu and other electric-type Pokemon weren't dependent on lightning strikes, then they'd all of a sudden be in a totally different position. If Raichu were able to deliver the same voltage over a wire connecting him to his opponent, all of a sudden he's not worried about the electrical resistance in the air, ionizing air molecules, that whole thing. Now, all of that charge suddenly goes straight from his cheeks, down the wire, and into the unsuspecting Squirtle across the arena, where the shock would be so strong that he wouldn't just be knocked unconscious, he would die almost instantly. The long and short of what I'm saying here is that the strongest move in an electric Pokemon's tool set isn't so much the lightning strikes, it's the ability to bite their opponent, break the skin, get down to that soft, squishy interior flesh, and then deliver that Pokemon the shock of their lives. Too bad Ash didn't pick.
That's kind of graphic. Would it be a different story if they were in water? You know, if Pikachu was in water, could he send more of a shock? Because you're in water, so there would be less resistance, right? Because like an electric eel, they shock. You know, if you're in water with them, I think they can hurt you a lot, if not take you out completely. So yeah, I don't know. Would it be different if he's in water?
Pay attention in physics class, or otherwise he would have been completely unstoppable. As it stands, though, now you know the reason how Ash is able to survive getting electrocuted week after week after week. Truly shocking.
Anyway, I hope you guys liked this video. I really enjoyed this, and I thought it was really informative. I learned new stuff regarding electricity that I didn't know before, or if I did know before, I totally forgot. I mean, it's been a couple years now since I've been in school, but I really like this, and unfortunately, Matt's correct. If Pikachu were to send electricity out, it would go to him, because he's freaking he would be considered positive, so he would electrocute himself, which would then go to the ground. And then even if he wouldn't electrocute himself and it would go outwards, it would only go out like an inch, and when you do get hit by it, it'd be like, oh, freaking, it felt like a pinprick or something, you know? It wouldn't be effective at all. Man, Matt loves to ruin childhood things, doesn't he? Anyway, I hope you guys like this. I think I'd rate this theory. This theory is a great theory. It makes 100% sense. It's all logic. It's all science. It's not just kind of like a wacky theory like some theories Matt has, where there's a lot more speculation involved. This is all science related. For the most part, we are talking about fictional characters here, but I think I'd rate this out of a 10 for a theory, like a 9. But yeah, anyway, I hope you guys like this. Make sure you guys go subscribe to the Game Theorist if you're new, and subscribe to the family, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Boop!